Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. I have an adorable card featuring Spellbinders Dancin Deer. These little guys are so sweet and easily put together, I decided to make 3. When I take on a project like this, I like to do all of my die cutting at once. Because I'm putting together 3 of these little cuties, as I'm die cutting, I'm sorting them out into 3 separate piles. I'm working with Spellbinders cardstock, and if you're interested in the colors that I'm using, I'll have those listed on my blog at bonniecarolee.com. Initially, I was planning on doing a slim line, but it's not quite tall enough for the deer, so I've switched gears and I'm doing an A2 size card that is in landscape orientation and top folding. After the card base has been matted with black cardstock, I'll be putting a card front on that has been embossed using a new folder called Argyle Socks. The design is beautiful and it creates a subtle but pretty background for the deer. The first thing that I like to do when I'm dealing with a pile of die cuts is sort them into some kind of order so that I can see what is going with what. Once I have everything sorted out, then I'm going to start putting the deer together, working section by section. Just a small dot of glue, I use a jewel picker to put the hooves in place for the hind legs. Next, I'm going to add the layer for the top of the head, which adds in some really pretty detail. This die cut is easy to position. I simply layer it on over top of the ears and make sure that everything is lined up at the top of the head. The little die cuts for the inside of the ears have been cut from alabaster cardstock, which is ivory. Each of these die cuts at the base are inked with a little bit of pink, and I honestly don't know what I'd do without my jewel picker. It just makes dealing with these tiny die cuts so easy. And now for a slight interruption to our deer making, I'm going to put together the candy cane, which is included in this die set. The detail for the deer's breast has also been die cut from the alabaster cardstock. I'm just going to add a little bit of light brown ink right around the edges of it before it's adhered to the body. And I just about forgot the antlers, so I add a little dab of glue, get them lined up on my work surface, and then set the head on top. The deer's head will be attached to the scarf, so I add a little bit of glue to his chin and then set the head slightly over top of the scarf. And then the deer's head is attached to the body by adding glue to the scarf and setting it on top. This deer has the red scarf, so I decided that he needed to be rude off and add on a red nose. The deer's front legs will be attached to the back of the body, so I add glue to the little ball at the top of the legs and then set the body on top of them. And then on go the hooves on the front legs. Now for the eyes and cheeks. Sometimes I'll inset these little die cuts, but for the deer today I decided not to. So for the eyes I cut a thin strip of black cardstock, and then for the cheeks I used the alabaster cardstock and then applied just a little bit of pink ink to it. The strips were then adhered to the back of the head to cover up the die cut openings. In order for the interactive element of the swinging legs to work, the legs will be adhered to the card separately from the body. And so I go ahead and adhere my trio of hoof-holding deer together. After the candy canes have been adhered to either end of this trio, they're going to be popped up with foam squares. Foam squares are placed at the back of the deer's head and the top 1/3 of the body, also on the candy canes. I avoid putting any of these pop-ups on the lower 2/3 of the body so that the swinging legs can move freely. One of those foam squares is going to be placed in the little circle die cut at the top of the legs to get them in position. The grid on the glass mat is used to line up the bottom of the legs. Make sure that the legs stay lined up. When I place the foam square, I put it right at the top of that die cut opening. Because the legs are not adhered to the body, I need to figure out a way that I can get this trio and their separate legs onto the card front. So I'm going to use a little bit of purple tape to hold everything in place. Once I've got them flipped over onto the card, I do not apply any pressure until I get the deer lined up. When the low tack purple tape is removed, I pull down on the legs and then press on that foam square to make sure that everything is adhered. And there we have it, this sweet trio of deer with their swinging legs. This card is going to be finished off with a sentiment from a new set called Christmas Magic. There were a lot of sentiments to choose from, but the one that jumped out at me that seemed to fit with this card was Love from All of Us. The sentiment was hot foiled with Ora hot foil on black cardstock and cut into a sentiment strip, mounted on foam, and then adhered to the bottom of the trio. And that completes this adorable card featuring Spellbinders Dancin Deer on a background using their new Argyle Socks embossing folder. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making this card. Thank you for joining me, and as always, I appreciate your visit.